नामाचार्य श्रीदास ठाकुर प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड श्री गिरि गोवर्धन ब्रज भूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र श्री जगन्नाथ पुरी धाम नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम गंगा माई जमुना माई भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी कलियुग पावन हरे नाम संकीर्तन हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र श्रील प्रभुपाद ट्रांसफर बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन निताय गौर प्रेमानंद ऑल ग्लोरीज टू somebody all glories to somebody all glories to somebody all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gaurang Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananandashalakaya Chakshurumritam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Name Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavani Paschatya Vishthaya जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे कृष्णा. So I'm very grateful to be welcome here and the lotus feet of Shri Radha Sharad Bihari Ji, Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Maya Gaurnitai at ISKCON Philadelphia. Today I'll speak on the principle of remembrance of Krishna. What enables remembrance and what facilitates forgetfulness. This is an episode from the 8th canto of Bhagavatam. There is a great king by the name of Indradyumna Maharaj. He is performing austerities after taking Vanaprastha. He is sitting and performing these austerities high up in the mountains within a forest. At that time, the great sage Agastya arrives there with several disciples. When Agastya Rishi enters the place of worship of Indradyumna Maharaj, he sees Maharaj Indradyumna busy in worshipping the deities. Indradyumna Maharaj is absorbed in worshipping the deities. But Agastya Rishi becomes offended that Indradyumna Maharaj is not responding to his presence and not making any signs of receiving him. So here it is described the anatomy of conflict. What goes behind the conflict? स एकदा आराधन कालमनात्मना गृहीत मौन व्रत ईश्वरं हरि जटाधरस्तापस अप्पिचं च्युतुं समर्चयन् आस कुलाचलाश्रम. So Shukadeva Goswami, when he is looking at Indradyumna Maharaj, what does he see? He sees here, first of all, someone who has accepted the Maun Vrat, who is very austere. So Indradumna Maharaj is glorified as being austere. Brata Ishwaram Hari, one who follows strict vows. Jatadharas Tapasa Apluto Achyutam, one who is filled with devotion to Lord Achyuta. Fourth, one who is perfectly engaged in worshipping the deities of Lord, Samarchayan. So from one perspective, the scene of Indradumna Maharaj worshipping the deities conjures up images of a perfectly situated devotee who is absorbed in the worship of the Lord. The scene appears perfect. This would seem to be the ideal of any practicing devotee, to attain this level of absorption that nothing can distract him. Even the presence of Agastya along with his thousands of disciples, with all the commotion created, is not able to distract Indradumna Maharaj from his absorption in the worship of the deity. So it's a great ornament. But this same scene is analyzed, observed and analyzed by Agastya Rishi in exactly opposite manner. What does he say? Tasma imam shapam adat asadhur ayam duratma akrita buddhiradya vipravamanta vishatam tamisram yatha gaja stabdhamatir saeva. He looks at Indradumna Maharaj, and Agastya Rishi is thinking. Number one, this Indradumna Maharaj is asadhu, misbehaved. Duratma, he is a person with wrong intentions. Akrita buddhir, he is less intelligent. Vipravamanta, he deliberately likes to insult sadhus and Brahmins. And so, Agastya Rishi comes to this conclusion. Because of all of these offenses which Indradumna Maharaj has done towards me, Vishatam Tamishram, he deserves to go to hell. And therefore I curse him that he becomes Yatha Gajaha Stabdhamatir. Let him become a less intelligent elephant. So now the question arises, was this Indradumna Maharaj's fault? To worship the deities and to be absorbed in worshipping deities, is it an ornament or an offense? It is actually an ornament to be absorbed. But now who would imagine that at that moment Agastya Rishi would come in and perceive this entire situation in a totally different manner. So therefore, the Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna to Arjuna on a battlefield. Why? Because Krishna wants to underscore the point that this material world is a place of fear. And the greatest cause of fear is change. The prospect of change sends shivers down our spine. And therefore, when we are faced with change, it creates internal conflict. And unless one resolves the internal conflict, one is not ready for external conflict. And therefore Arjuna had to first deal with his internal conflict, resolve it by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, and then he was ready for the external conflict. Desha kalana yuktani krita tapopashamani cha haranti prasabham chittam govinda abhitani. When Krishna departed, ended his pastimes, Arjuna was totally bewildered. He lost all hope. He lost all confidence. He came to Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was crying. And at that time it was a test. Because before the battle, Krishna was personally present to console Arjuna. But now in this situation, Krishna is not there. Who would console Arjuna? So it is described. Desha kala artha yuktani. This Bhagavad Gita is imbued with the message which actually brings out meaning as per time, place and circumstance, as per the particular conflict we are facing. Krit tapa upashamani cha, and it has the power to pacify the burning sensation within the heart. Haranti prasabham chittam govinda abhitani. And by remembering those messages of Krishna, Arjuna became pacified. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita carries the spiritual technology by which one is able to remain rooted in a situation which does not change in the midst of all changes in this world. That's why right from the second chapter, Krishna elevates Arjuna from all the different changing platforms which Arjuna alludes to in the first chapter to a platform which does not change, the spiritual platform. The soul doesn't change, Krishna doesn't change, the relationship between the soul and Krishna is eternal. And therefore, this Bhagavad Gita carries that message which can fix us permanently in his loving service. Therefore, his divine grace, Srila Prabhupada, first of all, wrote commentaries to the Bhagavad Gita. And when Prabhupada landed in London, he was asked a question by a reporter, Swamiji, why you have come to London? And Prabhupada said, the British spent more than 300 years looting from India gold, rubies, emeralds, precious jewels. But they forgot to loot the most precious jewel of India, the Bhagavad Gita. I have come to do home delivery. And since last 56 years, ISKCON has distributed more than 550 million pieces of literature connected to the Bhagavad Gita. So, I was distributing Bhagavad Gita in the local train in Mumbai. And as you know, local train is pretty crowded, to say the least. One professor was arguing with me, what do you guys get by traveling in that trains in Bombay? I got trapped because it was miserable. Do you get anything? I said, yeah, free massage. So I jumped into the train. It was, evening peak traffic time. So it was highly crowded and I had the book bag around my shoulder. And people surrounded me from all sides. And I had my back towards the wall and I couldn't move a limb. And suddenly one guy comes right in front of me. His face in front of mine. He looks at me and says, you Hare Krishna? I said, yes. Who else has this title? So he said, do you have Bhagavad Gita? I said, yes. So he said, give me one. I said, you can see my hand cannot move. But my bag is hanging from my shoulder. You put your hand inside, pick one Gita. So he put his hand inside, picked a Bhagavad Gita. He said, how much? I said, 70 rupees. He took out a 100 rupee note. My hands were still tied. I said, you see my pocket? Put the 100 rupee, take out 30 rupees. He put the money, took out the 30 rupees, Gita was sold, I did not move at all. That day I realized I am not the doer. When Krishna wants someone to receive the Bhagavad Gita, he can orchestrate anything. So the Gita which was spoken to Arjuna on the battlefield 5000 years ago on a chariot, when Arjuna did not have any social media account, that Gita is still relevant today. When technology is changing every 3-4 years, and all of you in IT know how much anxiety you have to cope up with the changing technology. But still Gita is relevant.
Yeah.
Because Gita deals with the subject of how to cope with changes. How to maintain your consciousness unchanging in the midst of all changes around you. That's the whole idea of the Bhagavad Gita. That Krishna is always trying his best to intervene and support in the midst of all conflicts, all difficulties. So on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it was not that the Pandavas did not have their share of conflicts and difficulties. Arjuna was, very worried about Yudhishthira all the time. So Yudhishthira was fighting this battle, and Yudhishthira got charged by Karna, and Yudhishthira could not resist Karna. So at some point of time, Yudhishthira's chariot driver escaped with Yudhishthira and went and took shelter of their own camp. Now Yudhishthira was very hurt that he had to leave with such an insult. Arjuna kept searching for Yudhishthira, he could not find him. Arjuna got worried. He brought his chariot and he saw Yudhishthira back in his camp. Arjuna looked at Yudhishthira and said, My Yudhishthira Maharaj, you are safe. And Yudhishthira said, I am safe. But Arjuna, why did you leave? Did you kill Karna and come? Arjuna said, No, I did not even go near Karna. I was just worried about you, my dear brother. Yudhishthira looked at Arjuna and started chastising him. I thought you were such a powerful warrior. How could you leave? How could you leave without killing Karna? You are a coward. You are of no use. Your Gandiva is useless. And as soon as Arjuna heard Gandiva is useless, he immediately picked up the Gandiva, placed the arrow, pointed it to Yudhishthira, looked at Krishna and said, My dear Lord, give blessings to kill him. Krishna looked at Arjuna and said, I spoke the Gita so that you can kill Kauravas, not Yudhishthira. So, Krishna now was bewildered that this is not what his original script was. He is the supreme controller, but things are going out of control. So Krishna had to do damage control. So immediately he jumped in and Krishna said, By the way, Arjuna, do you know that as per Shastra there are 2 ways of killing others? Arjuna said, Really? I never knew that. Krishna said, Yes. One way of killing is using weapons. Second way is you criticize the person. Arjuna kept the Gandiva down, started criticizing. He had an old stock of many memories. He started downloading all of them. And then after he criticized like anything, he immediately fell at the feet of Yudhishthira Maharaj, started crying and said, My dear Yudhishthira, please forgive me. I have committed such a crime. You are worshipable for me. Still I have criticized you. Then Arjuna became so overwhelmed with emotion. He got up, looked at Krishna, picked up his sword and placed the sword on his own neck and said to Krishna, I am such a sinner. I have criticized Krishna. I am going to kill myself. Krishna beat his hand on the head. That one more problem. So Krishna looked at Arjuna and said, Arjuna, did you know as per Shastra there are 2 ways of killing oneself? Arjuna said, My dear Lord, there are so many secrets you have not revealed. Krishna said, Yes. One way of committing suicide is you kill yourself with weapons. Second way of killing yourself is you do self-glorification. You glorify your own self. Arjuna kept the sword down, started glorifying himself. The other 4 are useless. I am the one who did everything. And he recounted all the incidents where he was the one who achieved victory. And then he was going on, and Krishna said, okay, I think that's enough. So, it is not that after speaking the Gita, the Pandavas could go to sleep. Many people feel that once you have heard the Gita, understood the Gita, started the process, conflict and change will disappear. So therefore, Krishna consciousness is not an insurance against fate, but it is an insurance against loss of faith in the midst of disastrous fate. And so, Krishna was always trying to help the Pandavas in different ways. And the Pandavas also kept making mistakes. But Krishna was always there to help and support the Pandavas when they wanted. And that's important to know that Krishna is always with his devotees. And so Chaitanya Charitamrita describes, Amanistarite tomar iha agaman parama doyalu tumi patita pavan. The devotees are always deliverer of the fallen. Krishna Pada Padma Gandha Jai Janapai Brahmaloka Adi Sukha Tarina Hibhai. Nityananda Prabhu glorifies Raghunath Das Goswami as one who is always meditating and smelling the fragrance of the dust of the lotus feet of Krishna. And because of which he has become completely oblivious to all kinds of prosperity and adversities of this world. Rakshake Ranata Mui Kemane Chutiba Kemane Prabhu Sange Nilanchale Jamba. So Raghunath Das Goswami has his own plans. I want to escape from here and come with you, my dear Lord. He tells Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says no. Krishna consciousness means to try your best, but to wait for Krishna to manifest his plans for you patiently. And so he says, Sthire hoiya ghar jao nahao bato krame krame pailo bhavasindukul. Go home, remain steady. Work on transforming your internal consciousness, not on your external activities. Antare nishtha kar bahye loke vyavahar achire karibe Krishna tomara uddhar. Improve your faith in Krishna within. Bahye loka vyavahar. You maintain your external social and occupational dealings. Very soon, when Krishna sees that you are battling against the internal temptations, the temptations to enjoy, the temptation to fight and have conflicts, and the temptation to give up and become hopeless. When you do that, when Krishna sees you are fighting against that and willing to resist, then he is pleased to see that effort and reciprocates and gives his grace to his devotee. So therefore, this is a very, very important principle, that in a Krishna conscious setting, we come together to engage in the process of hearing and chanting, to hear about all those devotees in the past who have actually accomplished this level of faith. And so, when you hear about such devotees, they become the benchmark for you when you are agitated. So when we are agitated, will you respond or will you react? So that becomes the challenge in front of us. Will you respond or react? And so the process of Krishna conscious training is the process of elevating our consciousness from being at the state where we would react without considering the consequences, to gradually temper our responses so that we are able to respond with maturity. And that's what, the satsanga of the devotees is meant to provide. The satsanga is meant to create that transformation. It is meant to create that change within. And what gives us the strength to respond rather than react? When we know that by altering our responses and being patient, the returns are more than reacting irresponsibly. So when you know what is in store, then you get the impetus to respond appropriately. That's why the whole process of Krishna consciousness, it creates spiritual piety. That's what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling. Antare nishtha bahya loka vibha. That internal transformation and creation of spiritual piety. We were in a yatra to Vrindavan with Gaurang Prabhu, and we were taking bath in river Yamuna. And then suddenly he turned around and asked a question. What is the difference between Ganga Snan and Yamuna Snan? And we didn't know that. So then he only answered, when you do Ganga Snan, you become purified of all piety, of all sin. Ganga Snan purifies you of all sin. And Yamuna Snan purifies you of all sin and piety. You become purified of all papa and punya. When we heard that, some of us started coming out. We have gone there to increase our punya. Then he explained that material piety is different from spiritual piety. Srimvatam Swakatam Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtan. So through this process of hearing and chanting, we actually increase our spiritual piety and we get the maturity to respond appropriately. In our temple in Chopati, when we have festivals, huge crowds would come and people are standing in line for prasadam. And sometimes when you are standing in a line where 1,500, 2,000 people are standing, you are in anxiety whether I'll get prasad or not. Have they cooked enough? Did they actually plan for so many? But more anxiety is for the server, because he's thinking, I will get prasad after finishing all of them. So then he starts giving prasadam in smaller quantity, subconsciously. And people complain and say, Arey, your server is giving sabji like chutney. Tell him to serve properly. So there is only one way you can remove his insecurity. Make a plate in advance for the server and keep the plate within his sight. So as he is serving and feeling some fear, he glances on his plate and feels secure that if I continue serving, my future is bright. Prasad is guaranteed. Then after that he starts serving with double enthusiasm. Starts giving double, triple. And people tell him, Arey, save something for yourself also. And he says, Arey, Vaishnava Seva is real dharma. From where he is getting such confidence? Because he sees that if I continue serving, I may go through various pleasures and pains in the course of the service. But at the end of the day, prasad is guaranteed. Mercy of the Lord is guaranteed. Tomara sevaya dukha hoye jata se to parama sukha se Seva Sukha Dukha Parama Sampada Nashaya Vidya Dukha. Thakur Bhaktivinoda says, my dear Lord, in your service, so many difficulties and challenges I go through. That dukkha is the cause of my greatest sukha. Why? Because whether I am your servant or not, sukha and dukkha is compulsory. Whether you wear kantimala, tilak, chant Hare Krishna, don't chant, sukha and dukkha is guaranteed for all. But he says, Seva Sukha Dukha Paramasampada. That sukha and dukkha which I experience while performing seva, trying to please you sincerely. Nashaye avidya dukha. It destroys avidya. It destroys ignorance. So therefore, challenging situations are faced by all. But we are exposed to Shastra to hear about several personalities in the past of how they responded when there were provocative, agitating situations. And how did they cope with change? That acts as a benchmark for us. So now, we see the example of Indradumna Maharaj. He is worshipping deities sincerely. He is absorbed. He is not in Maya. He has not committed any offense per se. He has only been totally absorbed, so absorbed that he did not notice Agastya Rishi coming. And he has now been cursed to become elephant. Now we can start a whole debate now. Who was right? We could start a campaign also, and take people's opinions. Whether Agastya Rishi was justified in cursing him. No, he was not fair, that's not proper. And someone may say, no, Indradumna Maharaj also should be not so absorbed that he forgets who's coming. So the debate can rage forever. But the important point is, what was the response of Indradumna Maharaj? Evam Shaktva Gata Agastya Bhagavan Nripasanuga Indradumna Rajarshi Dishtam Tad Anumo Upadharayan. So this verse describes Evam Shaktva, having been cursed, Gata Agastya, by Agastya Rishi, Bhagavan Nripa Sa Anuga. So he was cursed by the very powerful personality Agastya, who was accompanied by his associates. And Indradumna Maharaj was a Rajarishi, which shows that he was not just a king, was engaged in all kinds of sense gratificatory activities and sinful activities. He was a very pious, spiritually minded king. But how did he respond to this curse? Dishtam tat upadharayan. He considered this to be an act of destiny. Dishtam. He could see the divine will. Behind this ugly curse, he got the capacity to see the beautiful, smiling face of the Lord. And that's why temples are built, so that we are able to actually experience the Lord's prasad. Prasad is not just that which comes on the plate, but prasad is the Lord's mercy. And how we are able to see different situations which come our way. As we say, there is lot on my plate. So that which falls on our plate in daily life, sometimes maybe prosperity like gulab jamun, maybe adversity like karela. But how are we able to see both as prasad or the Lord's mercy? Dishtam tat upadharayan. And so, upadharayan means he introspected as follows. So when people are going to the gym, they work on their external muscles. Practicing devotees work on their internal muscles, build their resilience by developing their ability to process situations which happen in their life, by seeing that this situation which has occurred in my life currently, which is creating a tornado in my mind and making me so disturbed, is actually a result of a combination of 5 factors. Ishwar, Jeev, Prakriti, Kala, Karma. And therefore, I may not be able to understand why this happened, because Shastra is not meant to help us understand Krishna's will. It is designed to help us submit to His will. So therefore, millions of words have been written in the Shastra to drill this point into our system, that you can never understand Krishna's will. At the most, you can only get the capacity to submit to His will. And so here, that is described. How does he analyze? First, so there are 10 points which Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport on this word, upadharayan. How Indradanda Maharaj processes this curse. Number 1, he sees this curse as the desire of Krishna. When a calamity happens, how do we look at it? First of all, we see that as the desire of the Lord, the will of the Lord. When Parikshit, is cursed to die in 7 days and 7 nights, he immediately responds by accepting that curse and says, Tasyaiva meghasya paraparesho vyasakta chittasya grihesh abhikshnam. Actually, this is a benediction because of which I am able to leave all of my material attachments and take shelter of the Lord. And therefore, this is helping me, take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, we get the opportunity to see this calamity as the will of the Lord. So that's a very important first point, because we go through so many situations where we have lost control. Like yesterday I was sharing the story of Shyam Sundar Prabhu. There was a point where he had to go to jail. But Prabhupada encouraged him. And Prabhupada said, Krishna was born in jail, no problem. You continue chanting, you will come out in due course of time. And Shyam Sundar Prabhu did not know how that will happen, because the term was for 4 years. But when he went, within 3 months he got the release papers and he was allowed to come out. And then Prabhupada brought him to London and then brought him to India. And he didn't know anything about India, but he was so enthusiastic to organize the Cross Maidan Festival. He was out there, organizing, driving in the busy streets of Kalbadevi market. He has never been in India before. Driving in India, you need a divine license. So he was driving through Kalbadevi market. Suddenly he hit somebody and the guy fell on the ground. The crowd surrounded the car. He became nervous. He picked up the beadbag, started chanting. And then the crowd looked inside and they saw Shyam Sundar Prabhu. They jumped on the guy who was hit and started beating him. So he got bewildered. What's going on? I made the mistake, why are they beating him? Then he thought maybe in India they begin from there. Then they'll beat me. Then after that, they moved aside and said, you go. So he said, why is it that you did that to him? He was innocent. And they said, you are Krishna's devotee. How dare you disturb Krishna's devotee? So he got totally impressed that here is a culture where even if you are dressed as a devotee, there is so much of respect. So how much a devotee is expected to respond as how a devotee should in situations of calamity. So devotee means one who has the ability to see situations as the desire of the Lord. Second, he considered these curse to be the blessings of the Lord. And that's what Parikshit also says. Vayam dhanya tamaloke gurupi kshatra bandhava vayam pibama muhustatta punyam krishna kathamatam. We are the most fortunate. He's going to die in another 3 days. How can he call himself most fortunate? So Prabhupada explains there are 3 levels of fortune. Fortunate, more fortunate, most fortunate. One who gets association of devotees is fortunate. One who gets to hear in the association of devotees is more fortunate. One who gets to hear repeatedly in the association of devotees is most fortunate. Dhanyatama. Dhanyatama means most fortunate. To get to hear and chant in the association of devotees. Chaudike te sab log bole hari hari prema veshe madhye nritya kore gaur hari. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted and danced in Alanath, inundating the whole cosmos with the holy names, inviting everybody to participate in this hearing and chanting. The devotees were doing Harinam Sankirtan in Australia. The police, caught them and sent them to jail. They wrote to Prabhupada that, for bail we need a few $1,000. Prabhupada said, forget it. Continue chanting in the jail. They'll release you. So they started chanting. And the prisoners, they also got inspired. They also started chanting. Very soon they had a better preaching program inside the jail than they even had outside. They were enjoying it. Then soon the jail guards, they started joining the kirtans. So one day the prison warden entered and one of the jail guards looked at the prison warden and said, Hari Bol. So the prison warden got bewildered. What's going on? My men are getting affected. He brought the devotees and told them, we are releasing you. But they said, we have not paid the bill. So the warden said, you guys are more dangerous inside the jail than outside. So the Harinam Sankirtan is actually the process. Jai Shri Radha Shri. The process by which you realize actually whatever comes my way is the blessings of the Lord. Third, he saw that this curse has happened because of my own misdeeds. Fourth, he sees that this curse is nothing but a token reaction for my own sins. It's a token reaction. And fifth, he accepts that this curse is for my purification. Girayo varshadhara virhanyamana navidyatu abhudhrayamana vyasane yatha adhokshaya chetasa. Bhagavatam describes when the rains fall upon mountain peaks, they wash away all the dirt from the top. Similarly, when distresses lash upon us, it is an opportunity to move away from our complacency and become more deeply spiritually sheltered. So these are the 5 ways in which he analyzed that this curse is the Lord's design, it is the Lord's blessings, it is due to my own misdeeds, it is a token reaction, it is for my purification. Now based on this analysis, he thought of 3 ways to respond. What are the 3 ways? First, he said that generally the default response to any difficulty in service is, let me give up this service. It's not working. But his response was, while worshipping Krishna, I got cursed. My response is, I will continue to worship with more enthusiasm. Second, he said, although I continue to worship, I will continue worshipping undisturbed. Not that all through I worship I am looking at Krishna angrily. Why you did this to me? Not in a conflicted state, undisturbed. And third, I will be able to manage such an undisturbed state only in a state of utter dependence. जब से महाप्रभु न पाई कृपा धन किबराज किब देह सब कारण. Pratapadar Maharaj says, I am dependent on the Lord for His mercy and reciprocation. Without that reciprocation, all my wealth, all my riches, all my political influence is useless. So the responses should be, I will continue in undisturbed state, depending on Him. And then he ends with 2 expectations. What are my 2 expectations, he says? That number 1, Krishna cares for me and Krishna protects me. Krishna will protect me. Protect what? My consciousness. So he has been cursed to become an elephant. But because of his mature response, because of his responsible behavior, he was not someone who was just engaged in the sadhana of deity worship. Along with protecting his interests in the sadhana, he also knew how to be sensitive in his sambandha or dealings with the other devotees. So therefore, when a devotee performs his seva responsibly, performs his sadhana with absorption and intensity, and cultivates his sambandha or relationship with other devotees with sensitivity, then the combination of intensity, sensitivity and responsibility, that pleases the Lord. And the Lord blesses us with, as he says in the Gita, Mattava Smritir Jnanam Apohanam. The power to remember Krishna is not something intellectual. The power to remember Krishna comes from Krishna by His will. So we are spending decades of investment in practice of Krishna consciousness to try to please Krishna so that He will help us remember Him at the most crucial moments. And so the next verse says, as a result of his response, as Indradumna Maharaj, serving with responsibility, doing sadhana with intensity, and having relationships with sensitivity, Apanna Kaunjarim Yonim Atmasmriti Vinashanim, although he became an elephant, an elephant's body is designed for forgetfulness. Atmasmritim Vinashinim, it destroys remembrance of the soul. It is not designed for self-realization, elephant body. But Hari Archananubhavena, because of the way in which he worshipped Lord Hari as Indraguna Maharaj, with responsibility, with sensitivity, with intensity. So, Yat Gajatve Api Anusmriti, as an elephant, Krishna inspired him with remembrance of him. And therefore, it is described, Evam Vyavasita Buddhya Samadhaya Manohri Jajata Paramam Japyam Prakjanma Anushikshitam. When the crocodile caught hold of Gajendra, at that time, when he needed the most, Vyavasita Buddhya, Krishna, remembering the way he dealt with as Indraguna Maharaj, he reciprocated. Samadhaya Manohri, and Krishna from within his heart gave him remembrance. Jajapa Paramam Japyam, and Gajendra could express his prayers of dependence on the Lord. Prak Janma Anushikshitam, what he had learned in the previous life. So therefore, sometimes devotees have a tendency to compartmentalize their devotional activities. That this is time for sadhana. Now this is time for seva. And this is time for dealings with devotees, and all three are unconnected. No, it is actually a continuum. And each actually impacts the other. And overall, when we perform all these activities as Indraguna Maharaj has performed, then Krishna becomes pleased, and Krishna gives us the power to remember him. And so when Krishna says, Manmana Bhavamadbhakto, always remember me. And so Mahaprabhu says, Kirtaniya Sadamati. That remembrance is not an artificial yogic remembrance that by our powers we will try to remember. It is a remembrance which is facilitated by the pleasure of the Lord. And the Lord is pleased when we pray to Him with intensity, perform our duties towards Vaishnava's instructions with responsibility, and we reciprocate and deal and respond to other devotees in their dealings with sensitivity. Then the Lord is pleased. When the Lord is pleased, remembrance is facilitated. And when there is remembrance, then at the moment of death, we are actually able to remember and attain to the spiritual world and make our human life successful. So I am extremely grateful here to the devotees who have built such a beautiful temple and community of devotees to facilitate such remembrance of Krishna. And so we are grateful to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, who has actually created an oasis in this desert in Kali Yuga, where practically every element is created to impel forgetfulness of Krishna. But within such a desert, there is the Vaishnava Sangha, which facilitates remembrance. And so, Kaviraj Goswami says, Murkhani chakshudramai vishaya lalas Vaishnavagya bali kore etega sahas. I am disqualified, I am foolish, I am lowly. But the Vaishnava's instruction gives me the strength to perform this service. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Charanera Ekam Jarasmrite Siddhavohi Vanchita Sakal. lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath are so powerful that by remembering those lotus feet, all of one's desires are fulfilled and obstacles can be overcome. So that is the greatest wealth we have, the association of devotees, which gives us an opportunity to serve each other, please each other. And when we feel that there is a conflicting situation, we remember episodes like this and try to tolerate and deal with the situation in such a way that we remember that the outcome of this conflict, one outcome of this conflict is who is right and who is wrong. But the more important outcome of the conflict and the bigger picture is, at the end of this all, will I be able to remember Krishna? Or the outcome of this conflict will make me forget Krishna? So based on the bigger picture, we have to make the choices. And to help us respond with maturity, these beautiful pastimes from the Shastras are there, so that we can actually make the right choices. So thank you again, Dronacharya Prabhu, for having me here, Vishnugata Prabhu, and Devadeva Prabhu for their presence here, and Kaivalya Prabhu and other devotees for inviting me here and coming here, although it's a weekday in the evening. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. I'll give them small gift. Yes.
Are there any questions? Will there be time for questions?
Okay, let's take one.
Well, my question was, my name is Mitchell Devidasi.
Hare Krishna.
So when you were speaking on the 10 points,
Yeah.
you're speaking on the 10 points, and I'm not sure if it was just me being very enthralled and wrapped up in this wonderful and quite healthy spiritual discourse. Spiritual is always healthy, but on those different levels of consciousness, caring, compassion, these are based on Virtue Times mission. And I was getting more out of it. How are we reflecting that in our day-to-day lives? Are we just devotees in the temple room? Or are we devotees in the courtroom as well? Or are we devotees on the highway? But I only wrote down or was able to receive 2 of those 10 points. And I was wondering if you went over them all or I just missed them.
Yeah, so first 5, what all did you write?
I have down, thank you. Desire, and then Krishna's mercy.
Yeah, so to see the desire, to see the blessings. Then third, you try to see that this is due to my own misdeeds. Then fourth, you consider that for all the misdeeds, I am only getting a token reaction. Fifth, you consider this as part of my purification. Then based on this analysis, then you decide your response. And 3 responses, and this is all there in one purport of Prabhupada. It is not my analysis. So I'm just putting it down like that. So the first response is, I will continue serving in all circumstances and undisturbed with dependence on the Lord. So I will continue undisturbed with dependence. So 3. You got it? Then last. Then he looks at Krishna and sees Krishna is reciprocating with him in 2 ways. That Krishna cares for me and Krishna protects me. So this is, in Prabhupada's purport, this 3 lines cover all this. So when you read it, you may miss it. So all I'm doing is just highlighting it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. So let's do some kirtan.
Hare
की
जय।
श्रील प्रभुपाद की
जय।
गौर भक्तवृंद की
जय।
जय गौर प्रेमानंद की जय गौर।
His Grace, Gaurang Prabhu ki.
जय।
Gaurang Prabhu, thank you so very much for your talk on wisdom tonight. Very important lessons that we all, every day, are challenged with, and to learn from these great souls like Jumna, Maharaj. This is, I think you did connected with many people tonight on these very important lessons. So thank you so very much. Gaurang Prabhu has this book outside. It's called The Art of Resilience, 40 Stories to Uplift the Mind and Transform the Heart. If you're interested, there's a limited number at the desk out front. I believe they're $15 each. Gaurang Prabhu is also available for a few minutes to meet with some people if you have any questions or just want to connect. He'll be here. I'll be leaving to go to North Jersey later tonight. Just want to remind everybody that starting next week, during the weekday, in the evening, 7 o'clock, we'll be having a Jula Yatra. At 7 o'clock. There'll be more information in the newsletter. And then next Thursday, it's the appearance day of Lord Balaram. So we'll be having an evening program that evening as well. So please make sure you come for that celebration. Once again, our gratitude to you, Gaurang Prabhu. Thank you so much. Safe and happy travels to all the different destinations you're going. May you continue to spread the glories of Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. There's prasadam outside, and we serve on the front lawn. This is the prasad that we can put on our plate. Thank you again all for coming. So that you came from such a distance. It means a lot to us.